While playing hide-and-seek with my best brother, I hid for 3,000 years. During that time, he rose across the land and became invincible in that era, while I buried myself even deeper in the shadows, because after crossing into this world, I gained immortality, but I could never become invincible. My brother, on the other hand, became invincible, but he could not live forever. If he ever learned my secret, I didn't even dare imagine what the consequences would be. I thought I had covered everything perfectly, without leaving a single flaw, until 6,000 years later, when my brother Cang Yao suddenly remembered me. His wife Su Qingyan did not have much life left, and when people approach death, they always start looking back on the past. Yao, almost everyone from our generation is dead by now. Only one person disappeared long ago while we were all still here. What kind of ending did he meet? You mean Ling Xuan? When Cang Yao mentioned me, his expression looked unchanged, but between his brows there was still a trace of the sharp spirit he once carried. Back then, he and I used to boil wine and talk about the past and present, bragging wildly that we would become invincible and attain eternal life. Even now, he was still competing with me, even if he wasn't sure whether I was still alive or not. After all, I had once been one of the people most favored to become an emperor, and yet I had vanished for no clear reason. You two were best brothers. Whether he's dead or alive, you never tried to find out. He disappeared on his own. He should have lived for a long time. He may even still be alive right now. That was the intuition Emperor Kong Yao had managed to grasp. He felt that after I disappeared, I hadn't died. At the very least, I had lived through a very long stretch of time. Then why has he never shown himself? If someone hides and refuses to come out, then naturally he's afraid of something. Cang Yao's tone was full of disdain, as if he had won some invisible contest against his old brother. Su Qingyan quickly understood. Back then, I had only been one final leap away from attaining the Emperor realm. The only things that could have made me afraid were either hidden taboo beings or Cang Yao after he became Emperor. But since Cang Yao had already become a great Emperor, those taboo creatures naturally wouldn't dare show themselves. He's afraid of you? Why? He must be hiding some secret that he doesn't want me to know. No matter what secret he has, I, Cang Yao, don't care in the slightest. I am enough by myself. As he said that, divine light burst from Cang Yao's eyes, and the aura of a supreme emperor spread outward, shaking the entire universe and startling all living beings. He had already reached the absolute peak of this world. If even he couldn't do something, then what difference would adding one more Ling Xuan make? So you really never tried to find him? Never, Kong Yao only smiled. Whatever kind of secret had once made me fear him so much, he truly did not care. He was the emperor of that era. He believed he could crush everything in existence. So that's how he saw it. What a petty way to judge a gentleman's heart. He really thought I'd been hiding in the void all this time because I was afraid of him. At that moment, in a starry sky unimaginably far away, I also felt the imperial might Kong Yao had released. I couldn't even be bothered to hide my disdain. What is he going crazy for now? So what if he's an emperor? He's still out here disturbing the public. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years passed. I was already close to 10,000 years old, and yet my life force was still surging with vitality. My lifespan stretched so far that I couldn't even see its end. Even an emperor could live only about 20,000 years at most, but I couldn't feel happy about this at all. This immortality was both a blessing and a curse. It stopped me from touching that supreme emperor realm. Even so, I never gave up on pursuing the path of invincibility. If immortality could not become invincible, then it still felt incomplete. But if one became invincible and still couldn't live forever, then that felt even more incomplete. So after spending 10,000 years, I finally perfected the core Great Dao that belonged to me alone, the Dao of Thunder. When it came purely to Great Dao, I would never lose to Kong Yao. The problem was that my Dao lacked the support of an emperor's origin, so it could not unleash its ultimate power. Fortunately, after years of trying, I finally discovered a method that could approach the power of an emperor. That method was to comprehend multiple Great Daos and let them support one another, letting each Dao become the source for the others. The problem was that every single Dao required an extremely long time to understand. For others, this method was impossible. For me, an immortal, it fit perfectly. At that moment, thin strands of lightning spilled from my body, and hidden within the thunder was the pulsing rhythm of life. This was the Dao of life origin that I was about to comprehend. And just then, a wave of sorrow suddenly spread across the entire universe. Kong Yao, are you finally about to die? You didn't even find a single immortal divine medicine? Were you really that useless? I looked up into the depths of the starry sky, completely unaware that a terrifying conspiracy was already unfolding in silence. At that time, within Cang Yao's holy land, he stood before more than a dozen great tombs. Those were the resting places of his old comrades and loved ones. Not long before, a new grave had been added there. It belonged to his beloved Su Qingyan. Rage lingered around Kong Yao. His lifespan had only a few hundred years left. What I did not know was that he had actually obtained an immortal divine medicine long ago, one that could let him live for another life. He simply hadn't used it yet. Will any fool really take the bait? Kong Yao looked deep into the starry sky, thinking about how to make the weakness of his final years look real enough. He wanted to use the moment when he appeared closest to death to lure out the great enemies who had always been watching him from the shadows. In this world, there were demons from beyond, and ancient supremes surviving in the darkness. They were all taboo beings who had abandoned the righteous path, and they had clashed with Cang Yao more than once. Those taboo creatures had hidden themselves extremely well. In that sense, they were very similar to Ling Xuan. If he really is some kind of taboo being, then his choice to avoid me makes perfect sense. I almost hope you are. If that's true, then maybe there will still be a chance for us to meet again, and when we do, I'll kill you myself. Several hundred more years passed. While I was comprehending the Dao of life origin, another vast sorrow suddenly spread through the entire universe. Kong Yao, are you dying or not? I didn't believe Cang Yao would simply fall after a single life. If he truly had failed to find an immortal divine medicine, there was no way the commotion would be this simple. Was he trying to use this act to draw out his enemies? With acting that bad, what idiot would actually fall for it? That was what I was thinking, but the instant the thought crossed my mind, a heaven-shaking fluctuation erupted from beyond the universe itself, so powerful that the starry sky trembled from the impact. Wasn't everyone just saying Emperor Kong Yao had reached the end? Why does it suddenly feel like emperors are about to start fighting? Something happened beyond the domain. Are we in trouble? There were two sources of great calamity beyond the outer domain, the demon abyss and the soul mound. While the crowd was still lost in shock, layer after layer of dazzling heavenly steps suddenly descended from the highest point of the starry sky. What? The eternal heavenly ladder? Even a mythical forbidden zone like that has appeared in this age? Did Emperor Cang Yao really die at the end of this life? Even I couldn't help but stand up and leap toward the distant starry sky, curious to see what state Kong Yao was truly in. Could it be that after this era ended, I would be the only one left? Just when I thought things were about to become real, the heaven-shaking fluctuations from the soul mound began to fade, and the eternal heavenly ladder slowly disappeared as well. Before long, the entire universe returned to calm. The world had panicked for nothing. Seeing that, I naturally understood. Kong Yao was not going to die in this life. Those taboo beings had already seen through his true condition. Still, I had to admit that Cang Yao had managed to trick something. I just didn't know which forbidden creature had been watching him. The soul mound and the eternal heavenly ladder did look pretty imposing, though. Maybe I should prepare some proper dramatic entrance for myself in the future, too. I sat back down and muttered to myself. Before long, the sorrow that filled heaven and earth was wiped away. Kong Yao had rebuilt his life destiny and stepped into another life. I couldn't be bothered to pay any more attention and continued comprehending the Great Dao. But I still underestimated him. The moment Cang Yao restored his imperial might, he immediately began settling accounts with the eternal heavenly ladder and the soul mound. He took one step to the highest point of the starry sky and hurled out the Kangji spear. In an instant, imperial power exploded. Right before the stunned eyes of the entire world, he directly forced the eternal heavenly ladder into the open. Huge sections of its heavenly steps shattered apart, breaking into fragments of light that scattered into the depths of space. Everyone was shaken to the core. So what if countless taboo beings lurked in darkness? They still feared the reigning emperor and still chose to hide from him. As expected of an emperor, even I couldn't help giving him a small word of praise. Cang Yao and I were not walking the same road. In the realm of taboo existence, those who walked the same path were still emperors. Those who did not were mortal enemies. In the end, a furious and terrifying creature fell out of deep space with the supreme imperial weapon, the Kangji spear, still stabbed through its body. Right after that, Cang Yao rushed out of the great universe itself and stepped onto the soul mound. No one knew how that battle ended. In the end, he returned to the universe, but ordinary beings could not even look directly at an emperor. Naturally, they had no way of knowing how badly he was injured, nor could they learn the results of the battle. In the blink of an eye, another 8,000 years passed. I was now 18,000 years old, and I had already pushed the Dao of life origin to its absolute limit. I casually summoned a bolt of lightning, using the Dao of life origin as its Dao source, and the power it released rose by an entire level. It was far stronger than it had been 8,000 years earlier. This path works. No matter what era I live in, as long as I am not facing an emperor, I am confident I can crush everything in my way. At this point, calling me a taboo existence would not be excessive. And during those 8,000 years, Cang Yao had not exactly stayed quiet either. Just from what I personally sensed, he had broken into 3 mythical forbidden zones, and deep in the starry sky, he had captured taboo beings more than once. It always felt like he was busy with something, but over the last 1 or 2,000 years, he seemed to calm down and stopped displaying his status before the world. I didn't pay too much attention. I stayed immersed in my own cultivation. What I never could have expected was that several hundred years later, this era would end without any warning at all. The Great Dao between heaven and earth suddenly became unsealed, and all laws of the world spread open once again. That meant Emperor Cang Yao of that era had disappeared. No longer was there anyone suppressing the 10,000 Daos of heaven and earth. The shackles had opened, allowing the world to cross tribulation, prove the Dao, and give birth to a new emperor. But I sensed something was wrong. The sorrowful fluctuations transmitted by heaven and earth were not very strong. That made me think of an even more serious possibility. Cang Yao, did you also cut yourself down and become a taboo being? Most taboo beings hiding in darkness were once invincible experts who had already succeeded on the righteous path. They cut themselves down, withdrew from the Supreme Emperor realm, and then sealed themselves within divine source to survive in the world. They did all of this while waiting for the mythical land to appear, hoping to obtain eternal life. The problem was that no one knew whether the mythical land truly existed or how long it would take to appear. As endless years passed, the universe itself had long since stopped being able to support so many taboo beings. But as I frowned and thought more deeply, another possibility came to mind. Or perhaps Cang Yao had cut himself down and willingly become a Guardian Supreme, protecting the Dao of this world. Guardian Supremes were also taboo beings, but they sealed themselves away only so that when great calamity descended upon the universe, they could emerge once more and fight against disaster. That was taboo used to oppose taboo. While I was still thinking about Cang Yao, a massive palm that covered the starry sky suddenly appeared and slammed down, turning Cang Yao's holy land into ruins. The world was horrified and furious. Had the moment Emperor Cang Yao vanished already become the moment taboo beings began settling old scores? But I immediately noticed something was wrong. That holy land had been destroyed without offering the slightest resistance. It was clearly nothing more than an empty shell. Before vanishing, Cang Yao had already hidden the true holy land away from the world, and that attack from the taboo being was merely a test. What choice did you make in the end? Or did you really die? I looked into the sky, but I still couldn't determine Cang Yao's true situation. Then, all of a sudden, terrifying taboo fluctuations surged throughout the entire universe. With the suppression of the reigning emperor gone, taboo beings began moving freely through the world once more. And what I absolutely never expected was that I was about to meet one of them. A faint streak of light suddenly passed before my eyes. It looked ordinary at first, but I caught a trace of extraordinary opportunity within it and immediately gave chase. But the moment I saw what was inside that stream of light, my expression changed. Inside it was a strange spider-like flower. 3 wondrous blossoms grew from 3 separate branches, and with just a single glance, one could sense immortal essence flowing from within it. It was the Samsara divine flower, an immortal divine medicine, a supreme treasure that even invincible beings hunted for. Before I could make a move, something unexpected happened. The Samsara divine flower suddenly changed direction and flew straight toward me. At once, I thought of the strangest trait possessed by immortal divine medicines. Across all generations, even invincible experts could at most catch one. Very few had ever obtained 2. It was less like invincible beings found these medicines, and more like the medicines chose their own masters. They seemed to deliberately avoid gathering on the same person. Just when I thought the Samsara divine flower was about to pledge itself to me, it suddenly made a sharp turn and flew away again. What does that mean? You don't like me? I immediately chased after it and didn't bother restraining myself too much. After all, the reigning emperor had already vanished. Still, I did not use the Dao of Thunder. I only used the Dao of Life Origin. My thunder arts had once made quite a name for themselves in the world, and it would have been too easy for someone to recognize my true identity. When I got close enough, I reached out and grabbed. A vast fluctuation instantly spread over the Samsara divine flower, but just when I was about to touch it, it suddenly slipped sideways, transformed into an even brighter streak of light, and shot away again. And what shocked me even more came right after that. There was actually a passerby moving through that region of space who also spotted the Samsara divine flower and attacked to seize it as well. The 2 taboo-level powers collided and instantly stirred up enormous waves through the starry sky. The terrifying disturbance frightened the surrounding life forms so badly that it felt as if true emperor-level figures had begun clashing. A taboo being. I stared into that patch of darkness in the distant starry sky, my expression turning solemn. The clouds and mist around the other figure grew darker and darker, making it impossible to see what was hidden within. This strange power from the Dao of Life Origin. Who exactly are you? That taboo being couldn't see through me either, so naturally he did not make another reckless move. Meanwhile, the Samsara divine flower took the opportunity to slip away. Xuanhuang Jade Crown, which ancient supreme is this? At that moment, my gaze pierced through the darkness and landed on the place where that taboo being stood. The 2 of us sized each other up. In the end, I was the first to leave, and he had no desire to keep entangling with me either, so he also departed quickly. When 10,000 years had passed since Emperor Kong Yao vanished, I had already reached 28,000 years of age. The shackles of heaven and earth had long since been completely released. But now, the fortune of the universe had dimmed, heavenly geniuses had withered away, and there wasn't even a single powerhouse left who could attempt to prove the Dao. As for me, I had already cultivated my third Great Dao, the Dao of hidden extinction, to a flawless state. With the combination of my three Daos, each serving as the source of the others, I had climbed another step higher than I stood 10,000 years ago. The aura I now revealed was already enough to confront those taboo beings head-on. I thought I would be able to keep developing in peace, but more than 1,000 years later, I was dragged into trouble by a brother and sister and forced to exchange a palm strike with a taboo being. What I didn't expect even more was that one of those two siblings would one day prove the Dao and become a great emperor. On that day, the brother and sister relied on a unique method to break into a land of fortune, but they had no idea that it was actually the lair of a taboo being. That taboo being was buried in an ancient slumber stretching across the ages, and only after the siblings stole a divine relic from that place did it finally awaken. In the next instant, a taboo divine might filled with towering rage erupted outward. Yet the brother and sister had powerful destinies and astonishing aura, and they actually carried life-saving emperor talismans on them. Wrapped in the force of those talismans, they were just about to cross dozens of star fields and escape, but they were struck down in mid-flight by a terrifying blow from that taboo being. Then another palm came crashing down after them. What that being did not know was that in the star field where that palm was descending, I happened to be comprehending a crucial Dao opportunity connected to the ancient emperor Xuanlu. At the same time, I also saw the true source of this disaster. It was a man and a woman, both radiating dense imperial aura. They clearly possessed emperor-level treasures. That was the only reason they managed to survive a strike from the ancient emperor Xuanlu. After all, beneath the taboo realm, all were ants. Other than a great emperor, there was no one in this world who could withstand such power. What was even more unexpected was that those two actually had a second emperor-level treasure as well. In a single instant, they escaped across several star fields, making it impossible for the ancient emperor Xuanlu to keep tracking them. And as for the terrifying palm strike that Xuanlu ancient emperor had sent crashing down on this region, I obviously could have dodged it. But why should I dodge? With that thought, I raised my hand and pushed forward. Two overwhelming taboo-level powers collided, setting off a violent storm in the starry sky and making beings in every direction tremble in fear. This time, I did not gain the slightest advantage, but the strike from Xuanlu ancient emperor was still deflected by me. The rage of having his divine relic stolen by those little thieves drifted deep into the starry sky. For now, he could only swallow that huge loss. As long as his true body remained hidden and did not act in person, there was little he could do to track down those two thieves. Once everything settled down, I couldn't help turning my head to look in the direction they had fled. I had only taken a casual glance just now, but even that was enough for me to tell that the two of them were top-tier heavens chosen. Now that the fortune of the universe was turning once more and more geniuses were appearing without end. I estimated that a new great emperor would emerge very soon, and once the reigning emperor of the era appeared, I would have to hide myself carefully all over again. Otherwise, if the new emperor locked onto me and came chasing after me like a maniac, I wouldn't even have a chance to run. The other taboo beings were no different. But at that moment, I had no idea that my entanglement with that brother and sister had only just begun. Did another taboo existence just appear again? This time, we've really stirred up a massive karma. If we try to cross tribulation and prove the Dao in the future, I'm afraid taboo beings may interfere. Then, are we still going treasure hunting or not? The treasure-seeking divine incense still has a small section left to burn. Who knows? We might still find one or two more divine relics. Even those great emperors of the past might not have found this many divine objects before they died. The karmic burden of divine relics is too great. We may not be able to bear too many of them. Chu Yaoguang was the more rational one. If they had not accidentally obtained 7 emperor talismans earlier, the two of them would have died a long time ago. But they still had 5 emperor talismans left, so how could they possibly be willing to stop now? Because of that, Chu Yaoguang had no intention of giving up. She planned to first recover from her injuries and then fully digest the opportunities and good fortune brought by the divine relics. A little more than 100 years later, I crossed the starry sky at full speed and returned to one of my 3 hidden lairs. Over the years, I had built 3 lands of fortune, and the treasures I had gathered over tens of thousands of years were distributed evenly among them. But there was one lair that I valued above the others. Inside it, I had planted my one true divine object, the 7-colored bamboo. It could grow endlessly and be harvested endlessly. I had planned to let it grow for another several tens of thousands of years before cutting it down and using it properly. In the blink of an eye, I turned 30,000 years old. The Dao of Thunder, the Dao of Life Origin, and the Dao of Hidden Extinction had all reached completion. I began comprehending my fourth Great Dao and chose the overbearing Dao of Severing and Slaughter. My current strength was enough for me to roam the universe unhindered. I could perfectly disguise myself as a competitive supreme. And in my estimation, if I could complete 6 Great Daos, I should possess a certain degree of imperial might. If I reached 8, then the gap between me and a true emperor probably would not be very large. And if I ever reached 10, then saying I was an emperor might not even be wrong. Several decades later, I once again stepped into the starry sky to wander, comprehend the Tao, and temper my understanding through the mortal world. But while I was traveling through the red dust in search of enlightenment, I suddenly sensed that my lair had been visited. That day, guided by the treasure-seeking divine incense, the brother and sister arrived at an extremely hidden land of fortune. But the instant they stepped inside, the scene before them left them stunned. The place was filled with dense taboo aura. Chu Jinhong had never expected that the divine relic hunt they had prepared for over several hundred years would lead them into yet another taboo land. She was just about to activate an emperor talisman and run when Chu Yaoguang stopped her. Wait, there may not be a taboo being here. Or maybe it hasn't noticed us yet. The treasure-seeking divine incense can't be lit again once it's burned through. We can't leave empty-handed. Chu Yaoguang was not afraid of taking risks and still wanted to seize the divine relic hidden here. And after surviving the Xuanlu ancient emperor, she no longer feared taboo beings as much as before. As for provoking a taboo existence and having to repay some massive karmic debt in the future, she didn't really care anymore. They had already offended one of them. Offending one more didn't seem like it could make things that much worse. Chu Jinhong did not argue with her sister. After that, the two of them used their unique methods to gradually explore deeper into the lair. When they found that none of the taboo arrangements had been triggered, they slowly relaxed and began to think that perhaps there was no taboo being here at all, or that the taboo being was still asleep. Before long, they found the 7-colored bamboo. Both siblings instantly lit up with excitement. They knew this was the divine object the treasure-seeking divine incense had been guiding them toward. But the moment they touched the 7-colored bamboo, I immediately sensed it from a distant region of the starry sky. I had nourished the bamboo with my own aura for years, and a connection had long since formed between it and me. But what shocked me even more was this. I had clearly left a massive number of taboo-level measures throughout my lair, yet I only sensed the intrusion after the 7-colored bamboo was touched. Had a supreme come calling, or had they stumbled upon some taboo Great Dao method? I immediately activated the Dao of Life Origin and rushed back toward my lair at unimaginable speed. At the same time, I unleashed taboo divine might with full force, crossed an endless distance through the starry sky, and sent a clone of myself directly descending over the lair. The moment I arrived, I recognized that brother and sister at once. Only then did I finally understand why they had provoked the Xuanlu ancient emperor back then. Inside my lair, a large portion of my spirit treasures had already been swept clean. Even the 7-colored bamboo was being cut from the root upward with a divine weapon in their hands. If they had been able to uproot it completely, they probably would have taken the whole thing long ago. Killing intent surged inside me. I unleashed taboo divine might and fiercely clenched down toward the two of them. The brother and sister were terrified. They felt an overwhelming horror that they simply could not resist. Without the slightest hesitation, they activated one of their emperor talismans. A layer of imperial brilliance suddenly wrapped around them. In the instant before I crushed them, the two of them vanished from where they stood, and at the same time, they took almost the entire 7-colored bamboo with them. Only one tiny, pitiful piece of root was left sticking out of the ground. In the next moment, I returned to the lair at taboo speed, but it was already too late. I had still been too far away. That long-distance strike had done no more than barely graze the two siblings. It wasn't enough to keep them there. As I looked at the condition of the lair, especially that little stump of the 7-colored bamboo still left in the ground, a sharp, killing intent appeared in my eyes. I had once walked the road of competing for invincibility under the stars. I had slaughtered plenty in the starry sky. I had never been some merciful saint. I instantly erupted with my power at its absolute limit, and quickly sensed the location of the 7-colored bamboo. Without a moment of hesitation, I chased after them, but those two little thieves were extremely fast. They immediately changed direction, and the connection I felt through the bamboo grew weaker and weaker. They had already realized that I could sense the bamboo's location, and they clearly had some method to conceal it. In the end, the 7-colored bamboo was completely cut off from my perception. I could only stop and stare darkly into the vast, deep sky before me. At my current realm, I still could not do anything to those two. Even the 7-colored bamboo had been stolen away. Those juniors truly deserved to be called peerless heaven's chosen, beings born with immense destiny and fate. But for them to be this bold, were they really not afraid of being settled with accounts one day when they tried to cross tribulation and prove the Tao? I would not let this matter end so easily. Even if those two eventually proved the Dao and became great emperors, I would still make them repay this karmic debt. I did not like interfering with those who sought to prove the Dao and ascend as emperors, but I would still act according to my own heart. After all, only a flawless state of mind could keep one moving forward without hesitation. 14 years later, I once again sensed the location of the seven-colored bamboo. Without hesitation, I chased after it. I had finally managed to catch the trail of those two little thieves, but in the end, they still had another emperor-level treasure and escaped yet again. My taboo aura still lingered on the seven-colored bamboo. Even if those two thieves possessed some unusual methods, it would still be difficult for them to erase my imprint in a short time. At that moment, somewhere in the starry sky, the brother and sister hid deep within a remote region, both covered in wounds. Sis, I'm sorry. I lost control for a second and exposed the seven-colored bamboo's aura. But why is this Supreme different from the Xuanlu ancient emperor? Why is he still chasing us? Doesn't he need to sleep? Staying awake should consume his life force. This taboo Supreme really is unusual. If he's maintaining an awakened state, then he's probably planning something. Beings at that level aren't easy to guess. The only good news is that a mere seven-colored bamboo clearly wasn't enough to force his true body to appear. Otherwise, we would never have escaped. Next, we need to focus on erasing the aura he left on the bamboo. Right then, Chu Jinhong suddenly thought of something and spoke up. Sis, Song Jingming told us before that he discovered a taboo being. He got close to it 3 times, and it still didn't wake up. What if we guide these two taboo beings into contact with each other? Maybe they'll start fighting. When Chu Yaoguang heard that, her brows immediately knitted together. This would mean scheming against taboo beings. Existences at that level. Do you really think they can be casually manipulated by people far beneath them? And that taboo being Song Jingming mentioned, just because it didn't wake up, doesn't mean it's harmless. There may be some special circumstance there, or some terrifying danger hidden beneath the surface. And yet, in the end, Chu Yaoguang still agreed to her brother's suggestion. She contacted Song Jingming and asked for the exact location, planning to lure the seven-colored bamboo Supreme over there and see what would happen. Chu Yaoguang looked intelligent and careful on the surface, but deep down she had a stubborn streak that hated losing and loved stirring things up. The crazier the plan, the more irresistible it became, especially when it involved scheming against taboo beings. Life didn't offer that many years to begin with, so if you weren't going to go wild, then when would you? The brother and sister soon met up with Song Jingming. He was also one of the top geniuses of that era, someone who had ventured through forbidden lands and deadly zones, and had come into contact with taboo things before. After the three of them met and exchanged information, the siblings learned that the taboo being Song Jingming had discovered was hidden inside an ancient battlefield ruin concealed deep away, a place shrouded all year round by blood-red, baleful energy so dense that no one could push too far inside. After discussing it for a while, Chu Yaoguang finally decided to act alone and told her brother and Song Jingming to stay hidden and wait for news from her. None of the three knew whether this plan would lead to anything at all. If things went badly, it could even bring great danger. But even so, they still wanted to take the risk and see whether it might be possible to break through that blood-red, baleful aura and obtain the many quasi-divine relics hidden in the core region. After making the decision, Chu Yaoguang spent another 3 years preparing before finally making a move. On that day, she arrived at that ancient battlefield ruin, and the moment she saw the scene before her, even with her current experience, she could not help feeling shaken. The thick, baleful energy had not dispersed for all eternity. It was impossible to imagine what kind of horrifying bloodbath had once erupted here in some ancient age. Chu Yaoguang quickly found the region covered in crimson, baleful mist and entered it directly. But once she reached the core area, even she found it difficult to keep advancing. Fortunately, she had the divine object, the seven-colored bamboo. She wanted to see exactly what kind of state that taboo being was in, and she also wanted to know what would happen if she drew the seven-colored bamboo Supreme here. With that thought, she took out the seven-colored bamboo to clear a path and hurried deeper inside, because she was worried that I would come to kill her immediately. And in truth, I really did sense the seven-colored bamboo. But this time I felt a little puzzled. Only 3 years had passed, and yet its aura had been exposed again. Was that an accident, or was it intentional? Even so, I still moved at once. I had no fear of ordinary things. The only beings capable of threatening me were other taboo existences. Surely those 2 tiny ants couldn't actually summon a taboo being against me, could they? Very soon I descended with divine might into that region of the starry sky, but the sight before me made me freeze for a moment. An ancient battlefield, a little thief, a block of divine source, and a half-dead man. At that same moment, Chu Yaoguang's heart was also trembling. She could feel the terrifying pressure I carried. One hand gripped an emperor talisman tightly, but for some reason she did not flee at once. Instead, she held the seven-colored bamboo steadily in her hand, then actually raised her head toward me and let out a disdainful smile. Provoking a taboo existence that might once have stood invincible in the world, these young people really did have a lot of nerve. She was actually waiting for me to attack, hoping to see whether it would wake the taboo being here and perhaps expose the true secret of this ancient battlefield. I sensed her provocation, but my mind remained completely unmoved. With my current realm and vision, only taboo existences were worth my caution. As for an ant like her, there was no reason for me to waste another glance. I simply pointed forward. Starlight from all directions gathered together, condensing into a vast and surging power. In the next instant, the entire ancient battlefield was pierced through. The ground split apart, and the sheer force was something no one in this world could withstand. Even so, Chu Yaoguang still managed to activate her Emperor Talisman in time and escape. This time, however, the backlash was far stronger than before, and the injuries she suffered were far more severe. By now, I was already used to it. That kind of Emperor Talisman existed for exactly this purpose, to give juniors a chance to survive when facing taboo beings. With the power I had now, it was not easy to keep tracking her through that kind of escape. Right after that, I crossed endless star fields and arrived in person. I was also curious about the condition of that half-dead man. By then, the blood-red, baleful aura had already collapsed, the divine source in the core region had shattered, and the taboo being sealed inside it had finally awakened. I had assumed he would attack me on sight, but instead he only stirred up what little power remained in him and barely managed to keep his body from collapsing. I descended onto the ancient battlefield and examined him. He was a man. His figure still looked upright and imposing, but a decayed aura seeped from his body. He was quietly sensing the world around him as he murmured to himself. So, 900,000 years have already passed? Then I truly slept too deeply. I missed the great calamity. But the moment he discovered that I was a taboo being, killing intent instantly flashed through his eyes. Are you a taboo existence of the later ages? Or one of the old figures from 900,000 years ago? I did not answer. I guessed that he was probably a guardian-type expert. Some unusual cultivators who had proven the Dao in an alternative way would ask the reigning great emperor of their time to seal them away, so that when a great calamity erupted, they could emerge again and fight against it. Taboo itself is calamity, he said, and I still have one final sword left. I remained silent and only watched him. I held no ill will toward people like that. In fact, I was even willing to show them respect. But that was only on the condition that they did not provoke me for no reason at all. A taboo being who had never actually done anything evil. Just as the tension between us was reaching its peak, that man finally failed to hold on. His body slowly scattered into dust. So it was probably Fang Zheng, a figure once regarded by Emperor Hongqian as an equal. What a pity he could not attain immortality. No matter how brilliant or dazzling a person was, in the end, they could still turn into dust. I casually collected a few rare spirit materials from the area and then left. As for those two little thieves, I had no intention of wasting time searching for them on purpose. This matter was not worth that much effort. But if I happened to sense them again, I certainly would not mind taking action and resolving this karma once and for all. With my current cultivation, even after losing a divine object, I could still maintain a flawless state of mind and continue comprehending the Great Dao. On the other side, after Chu Yaoguang escaped successfully, she hid for several more years before cautiously emerging again to reunite with her brother and Song Jingming. The three of them first sent one person to scout the ancient battlefield. Only after confirming that no active taboo power remained did they dare step onto the battlefield ruins and begin searching for treasures. This time, their harvest was enormous. There were no true divine objects, but there were many rare spirit materials from the world, enough to help them advance much faster and surpass other competitors on the road to invincibility, giving them the chance to be the first to prove the Dao and cross the final tribulation. In the blink of an eye, more than 600 years passed. The three of them had all cultivated to the absolute peak of the world, with only the final step of proving the Dao and becoming emperor left before them. But they were also competitors to one another. In the end, the brother and sister were the first to begin crossing tribulation and proving the Dao, drawing down the emperor tribulation at the same time. On the road of invincibility, even siblings had no intention of yielding to one another. At last, a Dao seeker had appeared in this era. In an instant, two vast seas of emperor tribulation thunder descended. One divine lightning bolt after another split open the starry sky. Whoever could break through it would ascend to the very peak and stand invincible beneath the heavens. The entire world was shaken. This likely meant that on this very day, a new great emperor might be born and a glorious new era might begin. When the brother and sister noticed that Song Jingming had not followed them into the tribulation, they were somewhat surprised. He was also one of the strongest candidates to prove the Dao and was in no way weaker than either of them. Rumbling thunder exploded through the heavens as the siblings rose upward against heaven and earth, shattering world, destroying divine lightning after divine lightning. Their bodies were soon covered in wounds, but the momentum around them did not weaken in the slightest. While the people of the world were still drowned in shock, some taboo beings had already been stirred awake. So it's you two. In the end, you still made it to this step. Then some debts should finally be repaid. Because I had never gone into slumber, I was awakened first. The seven-colored bamboo had given the brother and sister enormous benefits, helping them surpass their peers and gain the lead on the road of invincibility. But gain and loss always came together. My things were not so easy to take. In the next instant, I slammed out 2 palm strikes. Boundless taboo divine might crashed down at once. The sheer horror of that force made the entire world cry out in fear. A taboo being has made a move. Is it trying to stop the Dao Seekers from becoming emperors? The siblings had long expected that taboo beings would come to settle accounts with them, and they instantly recognized that it was the seven-colored Bamboo Supreme. The aura of Life Origin Dao was simply too easy to identify. Chaotic light burst from Chu Jinhong's body. That was her Xuanyuan 11, refined from Xuanyuan 10, the very divine relic she had dug out from the Xuanlu ancient emperor's place. But at that exact moment, both the thunder of the Emperor Tribulation and Taboo Divine Might crashed down together. A divine lightning bolt pierced straight through her body, nearly knocking her from the sky. Then, my palm strike smashed into her and sent her flying backward in a spray of blood. On the other side, Chu Yaoguang held the seven-colored bamboo in hand. Her divine might was extraordinary, but even she could not directly withstand the power of a Taboo Supreme. Even so, the siblings' foundation was simply too deep. By drawing out their own reserves, their injuries recovered by more than half in an instant, and the aura around them remained as sharp and unstoppable as ever. But very soon, 2 more taboo beings made their move. Those were karmic debts the siblings had incurred themselves. Xuanlu Ancient Emperor, Feng Tianzun, Chu Yaoguang recognized both taboo beings at once. They truly had offended both of them before. Blood sprayed wildly from Chu Jinhong's body, and her entire form was nearly collapsing apart. Chu Yaoguang was not in good shape either, but even then, they still forced out the last of their strength and leapt forward once more. At that moment, Chu Yaoguang reached an even greater height and faintly touched that supreme barrier. Everyone in the world felt a tremor rise from the depths of their souls. But just as Chu Yaoguang was about to truly succeed, her brother failed completely. He fell from the very peak of the starry sky, drowned beneath one divine lightning bolt after another, and even the Xuanyuan 11 on his body was blasted apart. Chu Jinhong died. Just like that, she died in the tribulation of proving the Dao. The entire world sighed in regret and shock. This was effectively the first great tragedy of Dao proving in that era. Chu Jinhong had already stood at the very summit of the world, yet she was still hunted down by 3 taboo beings who refused to let her ascend so easily. And the most terrifying part was that taboo power erupted from the depths of the starry sky once more and came crashing toward Chu Yaoguang in the blink of an eye. Despair rose in his heart. He could no longer withstand another taboo assassination. That taboo being had chosen the timing perfectly. That single strike alone would be enough to smash him back down. But what no one expected was that Song Jingming suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of Chu Yaoguang. He should have had his own heart of invincibility too, but because of some emotion buried in his heart, he still could not stop himself from stepping out. He took that strike from the Taboo Supreme head-on in Chu Yaoguang's place. The moment he gave up his invincible heart, he became ordinary. His entire body was nearly shattered. Song Jingming! Even Chu Yaoguang was utterly stunned. A fellow competitor had actually been willing to protect his Dao at the cost of his own life. Then, another wave of taboo power erupted. Song Jingming forced himself to stay upright and once again used his body to block the taboo strike. In the end, he was blasted down into the depths of the starry sky, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. But Chu Yaoguang seized that opening and finally took the last step. A surging torrent of power flooded into him, instantly driving his aura higher and restoring his injuries on the spot. Even then, a taboo being in the depths of the starry sky made another move, still unwilling to allow Chu Yaoguang to become emperor. But it was too late. Chu Yaoguang had already begun to transform and ascend. He swung the broken 7-colored bamboo, and not only did he block the incoming taboo power head-on, he even spread his own divine might outward in an attempt to trace the location of that taboo being. In the end, Chu Yaoguang completely crossed that final boundary. He drew down a cleansing torrent of Dao essence from the highest heavens, and his entire being transformed and sublimated. In a single instant, he ascended to the absolute summit, his realm stabilized, and the universe shook violently. The supreme shackles formed once more, suppressing the 10,000 Daos of heaven and earth, leaving him alone above all others. the world was utterly shaken. At that very moment in the cosmic starry sky, one man stood alone at the peak. His long hair hung loose, his eyes blazed with invincible divine light, and the aura of a great emperor spread through heaven and earth. Chu Yaoguang had succeeded in proving the Dao. He became the final victor of that era. With only the release of his supreme emperor might, he was enough to fill the taboo beings with fear and force them to stop running wild in the world. But even so, he could not bring his own brother back. Song Jingming, on the other hand, was rescued by him in time, but he was crippled. His cultivation foundation had been badly damaged beyond repair, and in the end, he would not live much longer. The pressure of Chu Yaoguang's new emperor might made the whole universe tremble. At that moment, he had already begun searching for the taboo supremes who had attacked him. The only ones he could confirm were Xuanlu, ancient emperor, and Feng Tianzun. There were still two others whose identities he could not determine. One was the supreme whose seven-colored bamboo he had stolen, a being who used the Dao of life origin. The other used an ancient path of weaponry. Chu Yaoguang had no intention of letting any of those taboo beings go. Even if the grudge had begun because of the actions of him and his sister, there was no right or wrong on the road of invincibility, and he did not believe he had done anything wrong. The road of invincibility, the road of immortality, they were both too narrow. Asking him not to seek revenge? Impossible. Even I had not expected that little thief to actually win the final competition and prove the Dao. But now that things had reached this point, I could only remain quiet for the time being and continue cultivating, continue comprehending, and continue walking my own road of immortality and invincibility. After becoming emperor, Chu Yaoguang took the Dao title Chu Jue, and from then on, he was known as Emperor Chu Jue. In the years that followed, he spent his time both perfecting his own great Dao and searching for his taboo enemies. His personality had always been somewhat mad. He acted without caring much for consequences, and he never feared taking risks. At the same time, however, his will was firm, his killing intent decisive, and once he fixed a target, he moved forward without hesitation. 4,000 years after becoming emperor, he sensed that Song Jingming was close to death, so he helped extend his life. He even used Song Jingming's seed to leave behind his own descendant, acting with overwhelming force and giving Song Jingming no room to refuse. 8,000 years after becoming emperor, Chu Yaoguang finally captured the location of Xuanlu, ancient emperor. He attacked without hesitation, instantly crushing the place where Xuanlu, ancient emperor, had been hiding and forcing his true body to emerge. A battle between supremes erupted on the spot. Although Xuanlu, ancient emperor, had not decayed too deeply, he was no longer the invincible being he once had been. In the end, he was still slain by Chu Yaoguang. After that, Chu Yaoguang continued hunting his enemies without pause. He even toured the various mythical forbidden regions and fought several more great battles there. Finally, 15,000 years after becoming emperor, he forced Feng Tianzun into the open and killed him with absolute dominance. But that was as far as he could go. The other two taboo supremes were too difficult to find, and he lacked any crucial clues. I had thought he might let the matter end there, but in the end, he actually cut himself down with his own hand, sealed himself inside Divine Source, and became a taboo being. And the reason he did it was absurdly simple. He wanted to lie in wait for his enemies to appear so he could kill them himself. That was just the kind of person he was. Throughout history, among the countless invincible beings, there were always a few particularly abnormal ones. By the time I reached 48,000 years old, Emperor Chu Jue vanished. Heaven and earth mourned together, and the 10,000 Daos echoed with sorrow. That era of Dao proving also came to an end. But I could sense the familiar wrongness in the grief of heaven and earth, and I guessed that Emperor Chu Jue had also fallen into the ranks of taboo beings. For me, that was not good news. After all, there was still enmity between us. Even if he had provoked me first, there was no longer any point arguing about who had been right or wrong. The longer one lived, the more grudges one accumulated, and the heavier karma became. So now I had a taboo being as a mortal enemy too, huh? I could only sigh. Still, I was not like ordinary taboo beings. I could switch identities more flexibly because I had mastered multiple great Daos. My grudge with Emperor Chu Jue had been formed through my life origin Dao methods. In the future, I could simply avoid using those methods. In fact, if the right opportunity came, I could even deliberately expose the Dao of life origin and lure Emperor Chu Jue into a trap, burying him for good and cutting off this future disaster. Looks like I was really getting used to being a taboo being. I was already thinking about scheming against and burying my enemies. And when I thought about that, I could not help but sigh again. Having lived to 48,000 years old, I truly counted as a real taboo existence now. My vision and way of thinking had long since reached the level of those taboo beings. Quite a few of them had enemies fated to oppose them. Across the endless years, they had fought, schemed, and counter-schemed again and again. Very few taboo beings could stay completely untouched by that kind of entanglement, but in the end, they were all destined to walk toward destruction. Only I could walk the road of eternal life and true invincibility.